I'd like to talk to you about the invitation to praying the prayer of lament, but including the and yet piece of that. And I think we find that so beautifully illustrated in King David's Psalms. And in particular, I want to start by reading to you a favorite psalm. You've heard the 23rd Psalm so many times. I'm reading it in the New Living Translation. The Lord is my shepherd. I have everything I need. He lets me rest in green pastures. He leads me beside peaceful streams. He renews my strength. He guides me along right paths, bringing honor to his name. Even when I walk through the dark valley of death, I will not be afraid, for you are close beside me. Your rod and your staff protect and comfort me. You prepare a feast for me in the presence of my enemies. You welcome me as a guest, anointing my head with oil. My cup overflows with blessings. Surely your goodness and unfailing love will pursue me all the days of my life, and I will live in the house of the Lord forever. We love that psalm. That psalm has such a confidence in the presence and power of God to give that peace. And even the words indicate in the midst of things like the shadow of death. Now, here's something that's super interesting and super instructive, I think, in terms of how we can come close to the Lord in prayer. I want to read to you from the psalm that David wrote right before the 23rd Psalm, the 22nd Psalm, and I'll just read the starting couple verses. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why do you remain so distant? Why do you ignore my cries for help? Every day I call to you, my God, but you do not answer. Every night you hear my voice, but I find no relief. The same man wrote both of these psalms, and they're right side by side. You'll recognize those words from the lips of Jesus from the cross, just as he was about to die. My God, why have you forsaken me? So what happened to David between writing the 22nd and the 23rd Psalm? And I think there's a lot to be learned in thinking about that. If we go through the rest of that Psalm 22, well, actually, if we go to the third verse, we find this little phrase, yet. All of this is going wrong. Where are you, O God? And verse 3. Yet you are holy. The praises of Israel surround your throne. Our ancestors trusted in you, and you rescued them. You heard their cries for help and saved them. They put their trust in you and were never disappointed. And yet, it just seems like not just here, but in all his psalms, the imprecatory psalms is what they're called when there's this lamentation and blaming, and God, where are you? Every time, though, there is a turning where he's like, David is just searching for that remembrance of a time when God was faithful, that he had come to know by calling that to mind. And so here, he first calls to mind the stories of his youth, of how God had saved his ancestors, taking them through the flood or through the waters. Thinking back to Noah and the flood, but thinking then of the waters of the Red Sea, taking them out of Egypt to the promised land. So he's thinking about the promises that he's known other people have said where God has been faithful. But he goes on to lament, and he carries on. But I am a worm and not a man. I'm scorned and despised by all. Everyone who sees me mocks me. They sneer and shake their heads. And then he finally gets to another yet. Yet you brought me safely from my mother's womb and led me to trust you when I was a nursing infant. I was thrust upon you at my birth. You have been my God from the moment I was born. So now he's moved on to remembering for himself that this has impacted him, this faith, this presence of God. And this is what you'll find throughout his lamenting psalms. And I think what we learn from this, and I know I've experienced this, but to learn it from the Psalms and these characters that are lifted up, but that are just like us in terms of their feelings of fear and outrage and terror and despair. God has seemed fit to have these things recorded. God has seen fit, I believe, to call us to bring those things before him. And I think what changed David was that he did this, that he obviously did this. And he included the and yet. He would bring himself unvarnished, just what was on his heart before God. And he'd look for the and yet. And yet you have been faithful in the past, oh God. You have been my God. I do recall that. I remember when you saved me before. And then there's another lamenting. And what I've experienced and what I see here is that when we bring that lament, something supernatural happens to us. We encounter God in a deeper way because we have been real before God. And that matters. It's a mystery, but it matters. I have had myself in cases where I have just wondered where I was going to get out of a situation, how I was going to find hope, and brought it straight to God and been truthful, brutally so. And it's almost like those are the prayers where I get back the deepest sense of his presence with me. Not that at the moment the situation has changed, and yet inside me it's changed. There's a sense of his presence like no other. I believe that that's what has happened for King David. In all of these Psalms, I urge you to read his Psalms, but I also urge you to go beyond that. In this time of pandemic, which is really ushering in for all of us, a lot of unknowns, a whole lot of unknowns, and whether or not they're pressing right down on you or they're just in the back of your mind rumbling around, what's it going to look like next month, in a year? What's going to look like next week? How are we going to get out of this economic pickle that we seem to be in? How are we going to escape further death coming from this virus? So many things. And those are the big picture things. I've heard from seniors, that are suddenly pulled out of class and, okay, you're going to graduate, but now you're hanging in limbo, and who knows if your college is even going to be open next year, or who knows if it's going to be online, or there are just so many ways that you all are experiencing the unknown. So please consider bringing that lament to God, just unvarnished. And would you also think about, or if you can't think about the and yet, tell that to God. God, I don't have an and yet. Could you give me an and yet? Could you bring to mind some time where I know you've been faithful? Those are the kind of prayers that you, all of a sudden, there he is. He shows up, and it's like, wow, that's God. And I am going to tell you, I believe that as you do that, he will draw you in closer to his heart. He will get you through this uncertain time. He'll get me through. He'll get us through. But he will also deepen your trust in him, that so much more easily can you get to the and yets, because you go, oh yeah, remember when that just looked hopeless and I prayed and called out and, oh God, you came through. So I offer that to you, and I look forward to hearing some of you. Let me know how it goes. How are your lamenting prayers going as you add the and yet, and sit and wait for God to reveal himself in his power, to fill your cup to overflowing, to allow you to walk through the valley of the shadow of death with confidence in a God that loves you best.